talking about localized learning in a globalized context. In the last 2 days, we've heard about technology, globalization, initiatives taken by the government. But ultimately, all these things are good, and we have some fine exhibitors outside. Ultimately, but education boils down to the teachers. And I think that is a pain area which a lot of people feel that you can have the best infrastructure, you can have the best acoustics, smart TVs, and ultimately if the teacher is not up to the mark and they have not been empowered, it all falls flat. And for a teacher, it's a very, how many are teachers here? Can I, teachers or ex-teachers, school heads? Okay. How many are service providers to education? You're both? Yeah. You're gonna raise your hand for every question? Possibly. All right, thank you so much. So yeah, so that's a, and teachers, ma'am, I'd like to start with you first of all. Yeah, you can pick up the mic. Teachers today are in a very challenging situation, a globalized world, a very uncertain world our children are graduating to. There's all this technology. You can try the other mic as well. Just tap that. Yeah, that's working. With technology coming in, the world changing, a very different world from the world we all graduated to. And yet, at the end of the day, they're supposed to finish their syllabus, finish the NCRT. Parents want all chapters to be finished. So how do you, and on top of that, honestly, the salaries that we pay to the teachers, and then we blame that why aren't we getting good teachers? We have a problem of teacher training institutes. And Mr. Sarup was here just now, and he was sharing me 4,000 B.Ed colleges are just on paper. So we have we don't pay well, we don't train well, we put them in an uncertain environment. We've asked them, we put so much pressure on them. How, as an institution, should we solve this, or as a sector, should we solve this problem of good teacher quality? Because unless we really reach that level where we want to, all this investment is actually going down the drain. So how do you look at this problem?
First of all, good afternoon, everyone, on the dais and audience as well. I have prepared myself to wish good morning to you all, though. It's happening in the afternoon. The problem is, I would like to start, a doctor wants his children to become doctor, and an engineer prefer to make their children to engineers. But if we ask a teacher, they would never want their children to be teachers. It happens in our families too. And what makes this happen? Maybe the recognition, and as you were saying.
But don't we have the guru as a word, which is a very,
yeah,
as a word too? Why not the
are we actually missing out one very important quotient? We every time run behind IQ, intelligent quotient. We try to build that in teachers, in students, but are we ignoring EQ? The emotional quotient. Teaching is a very, very complex thing actually. Teachers, especially in the private sector, they are not limited only to follow the curriculum or complete the lessons and syllabus. They have many other responsibilities apart from that. They have to facilitate the children to build up their aptitude towards learning. And they are like teachers, unless they are trained to do that, unless they have a teaching aptitude in that. As you mentioned, guru concept.
How do we solve this problem? I want to hear that.
Solving is like by improving the training, teacher trainings. Unfortunately, we see so many of our teachers enrolling themselves in B.Ed, and they pay some condonance fee in the university and they complete their exams. Are they really learning something from their B.Ed course, or just a qualification? Just a certificate, right? So for that, schools should first empower their teachers with different skill sets. And for that, the first step is how to diagnose the skills in each. It is not that a Hindi teacher has only Hindi as their strength. Maybe they have many other core competencies lying in them. So identify, first diagnose what are the core competencies of your staff and try to empower them, try to allot the duties what they can actually do well with passion. Unless passion exists, the work will become just a robo work, and
So
we
you
will just
believe,
find zombies in the
you believe that
campus.
when the teachers come on board, it's the role of the institutions to do this. Is that what you're...
Even when we, we have to encourage students to take up teaching as a career in their future. Significance of teacher
You mean
should be,
attracting better talent?
yes, and to attract better talent into this teaching sector, the first thing is let them respect this particular profession.
Okay. Sir, I think we're short on
Thank
time.
you.
So do you see that degradation of respect in the community that's happening, where it's more like now a consumer behavior where I'm paying you money and you better deliver kind of a thought process amongst parents, or is that guru word? Because respect is a very important word if you want to attract good talent to come into our sector. So do you see how do you see the society changing in that sense?
In fact, coming as I do from education technology field, I'll address the question from that perspective. If you look at most of the education technology solutions that are available today in the industry, you would see that lots of them are created in such a way that it actually brings down the value of the teachers rather than trying to enhance it. For example, there is an overuse of animations and videos in classrooms that are recommended by some of the technology players. We came into the market, we tried to look at what is it that teachers can do in the classroom, not something to replace them. How can technology enable enable teachers to gain that respect back? So that doesn't mean that you play a 20-minute animation in a classroom. It makes the value of the you're actually degrading the value of the teacher, right? You're taking away the precious time that a teacher can interact with the students, because in a classroom is a social space. It is not a place for just information transfer, which is what EdTech to some extent tries to do, and that's where we try to take a break from that and create a solution that is completely looking at empowering teachers.
But there are cases in when you go into the smaller towns where showing an animation is better than what the teacher's going to teach in the classroom, right? So it's okay to say in the developed cities and the metros where we have good talent, but in smaller towns, isn't that still, at least it ensures a basic level of information sharing with the children as well, or?
It depends on how we look at teaching and learning. So if you look at teaching as information transfer, yes, but teaching is not necessarily information transfer. It's more of an interaction between
But the word is,
teachers
if
and
you
students.
use the word teaching and facilitator, then that makes a difference,
It's not
right?
about I don't see a difference in teaching
Teach
and
the
facilitate.
word
I
is
think
to
there is this,
transfer information.
yeah, like for example, the same thing, we talk about a lot of the terms that have come in today are actually terms that have been used many, many years ago. Like for example, when you read Indian classics or when you read Greek classics, for example, you realize a lot of the things that you talk of as fads, like 21st century, for instance, Aristotle's works reflects critical thinking and creativity to great extent, right? And so, I don't really see a difference between teaching and facilitating. Both are essentially, a good teacher is a good facilitator.
Okay. Ma'am, I'd like to pass on mic to you as well. How do you deal with it, and how do you feel this, who has the responsibility, who is responsible to train the teacher? If I could ask you this in very simple words.
Well, I think all stakeholders, everyone within the process needs to be a part of the training, or rather, I prefer to call it professional development. So starts with the ministry, and I think our ministry does understand, so the Human Resource Ministry, and as we saw in the morning too, Dr. Archana from the UGC mentioned about the Swayam program. So everybody within the system is involved, should be involved, where the development of teachers is concerned, because we know we're building a generation, and equipping our teachers is a part of that process. So it starts from the government level, comes down to states, comes down to schools, the leadership within the schools, to the parents saying, yes, we want to be a part of the process too, in a sense of, there are some schools that kind of give children a half day, because that half day within that school setup is actually given for leadership or teacher learning spaces. So the parents agree that our teachers can be much more if we give them that time too. So the whole space of every stakeholder needs to be involved in that process of educating teachers.
So, Vandana, I'd like to ask, that sounds very nice on theory, but in practical sense, is that doable? Is it something that we can expect of, because as private institutions, we can't wait for, suddenly euphoria to break open, suddenly the government's setting up really wonderful training institutes, families are sending the brightest minds to become teachers. That's not going to happen, right? So as a private institution, as an entrepreneur, how do we solve this problem right now?
Very good morning to everyone, and I think it's a very nice question to get to understand how do you find a solution to the problem of making sure that every person, every teacher in your institution has those skills. And I think the teaching learning skills, when you talk about communication skills, developing critical thinking skills, or decision-making skills, I think these are the skills that we need to develop. However, we need to keep in mind there's a process. You can't expect teachers to be there on day one. So you need to have different layers of training. So you have a teacher who's new, just come out of B.Ed, so you may have a different induction for her. And a person who's experienced, maybe you may work on pedagogy, maybe work on how to teach. And then there is something known as refreshers training while the teachers are on to the program and teaching. So I think training is continuous. So my message to most people and most governing boards is stop budgeting on green marble, whiteboards, and I'm not going to say something to be biased on the stage, but on things that really don't make a difference. Governing boards need to invest on making sure that there is learning and development. So I'll give you an example of my school. We have a learning leader. So who do I go to if I have a problem? Is a person, you create buddies, you create friends, you create people in the institution. And I always say, I'm not a principal of a school, I'm a learning leader. And if you see outside my office, a person who cares is what is written. I don't have Dr. Vandana Lulla, BA, M.Ed, PhD. I don't know why people put so many qualifications. It is something that we need to know that all of us are learning. I have a student with me who's sitting in the audience. At present, I think the students are teaching the teachers.
Who's the student? Can we have a...
There she is, clicking a picture.
But she's already on Instagram and posting all the hashtags and everything.
That's what.
Cool,
Why is she
cool
there?
Princey hashtag, right?
Yeah. So you see, I'm learning from her. Yeah. So learning is lifelong. And I think our whole concept of being principal, being teacher, has to be changed. Our designations should be learning. Learning is something that we need to continue to work on. And I think it's time that we understand that today's kids are beyond all of us. So training is one of the important aspects. However, it's a process. You can't, and I must say, I talk about my grandson. He's in grade 4. And the other day he came back from my school where he learns, and I'm proud to say he's doing the IB program. He came back to me and he said, you know, Nani, how do you think this could have not been taught the way I learned it in classroom today? I can teach, I can see on my iPad the same concept. It was waste of my time. And that was an eye-opener for me. I'm learning from my grandson, who's just 8 to 9 years old.
Yes, I think if we stop learning being education, that's the biggest disservice we could do to the profession, right? How do you, yes, Mark, you want to add on to that? I mean, what kind of solutions or what do you see as the challenges of India? And how do you think, because I look at India that we cannot look at solutions coming from outside. We have to have homegrown solutions. So what do you see? Do you see solutions coming out to India to the size of problem that India has, the magnitude of problem in terms of teacher quality is huge.
Okay.
And please don't use the word Finland in your answer.
Well, no, I was going to use the word Finland, actually not in the context you think I'm going to use it. No, because, yes, it has shocked me a little the way people wanted to go and find simplistic solutions that you can just pick up lock, stock, and barrel from elsewhere. And the Finland case is an obvious one. This is a tiny little country with a phenomenal standard of living for every citizen. It's just not comparable and it's not transferable. But I'm sure there are lots of educators in this country had lovely trips to Finland, and lots of people from government ministries and all sorts. You know, they have some lovely trips. Another classic example, of course, what drove that?
So we already got one code for Twitter.
What drove that was high PISA ratings. Now, the interesting one, of course, is another country with high PISA ratings is Singapore. But it is fascinating that the ministers of education in Singapore have spent the last 4 or 5 years telling the world, if they would listen, do not emulate us. We have to change massively. What we're doing is not going to be effective in the 21st century going forward. They are in the same process that we are, but it's in a different environment, but they also are in a process of redesigning and recreating education for a new paradigm.
Singapore is also, I have friends whose kids are studying in standard schools, and they say internally those standardized tests, those rote learning is still very much there. They might be glamorous on the outside.
That's the problem. Singapore became phenomenally successful at doing old-style learning, old-style teaching, rote learning and large quantities of homework and things. And that's why they're saying, don't come and emulate us. Don't come and copy our methods, because that's not the way to the future. Back to your question about how do we solve, the big word to me and the big key, and it was, I think, running through a lot of what Vandana has said, is leadership. And I think from the first perspective, as leaders in educational institutions, we have a duty for the education of another group of people. We've talked about the education of the children, obviously. We, as the leaders, have a duty to have the courage to look parents in the eye and have continual dialogue about what they need for their child, not what they want. Now, to be fair to them and to respect them, their desires are driven by their own experiences when they were children and they were in school. I can give a quick analogy. If I go back to my first career, I worked in financial services in the UK. Used to work with high net worth private individuals. And I once had a client, and it was actually at a time as well when a whole bunch of colleagues had said to me, Mark, you don't lose clients. Why don't your clients go? Come on, everyone gets some turnover. I said, well, okay, look at this situation of this lady. What actually happened was, one Sunday, her son comes round for lunch, and he says, oh, Mummy, you're with that boring bank. I don't think they're doing good enough for you. I've got this guy, I'm sure he can do much more. And she turned on her son and she said, don't you dare. I only take advice from Mark, and I won't deal with anyone else. And why? She told me the reason I said that to him is because you don't treat me like a foolish old lady. You teach me to know the smart questions I should ask you to have confidence that you're doing what I need. If I can ask you the smart questions, instead of asking you silly, naive questions, I don't feel like an idiot. I feel like I know what I'm asking for and I know what I'm getting. And we have an intelligent dialogue. That's a part that we haven't done enough of as schools. That work with the parents to help them to understand how the world that their children are growing up in is changing and how it needs a different paradigm from education and how they can then support the teachers to deliver that new paradigm.
Great. So you're talking about, ma'am, I like to, how do you see the role of parents? So now Mark's hinting that ultimately it's about educating the child. And if teachers, we can improve to a certain degree, we cannot, but at least get the parents involved as well. So we all, ultimately the goal is to educate the child. So, and somebody talked about the technology as well as an aid. So is that a fair process, or do you think all education will happen via the teacher only in the school? Because information sharing, information gathering is not happening. We have YouTube now challenging the teacher, right? So we cannot be the masters of information. But when it comes to education, learning for life, do you think it's always going to be through the teacher, or are they going to be, can we just bypass the leadership, go through the parents and educate the child? How do you see that shaping up in the coming years? How do you think this dynamics is going to change? Or do you think nothing's going to change because ultimately those class 12th marks, those IIT entrance examinations, they're going to drive our education systems and nothing's going to change? Is that how you look at it? How do you see the change happening now?
Well, the change is us, the teachers. We are creating leaders for tomorrow. That, as we all know. But I think in this changing, very, very fast changing world, we need to have we need to have thinking teachers. That's one. Two, we definitely need a platform for parents to come and do learning sharing so that our children are comfortable to gather the information and share it with the parents, which makes it easier for the school to take it forward.
So this platform, you mean inside the school for parents to come and share? Is that
Well, I think certainly...
or just building communication between the home, the parent and the child?
Right, right, yeah. And that's a lot of learning can happen. Not all the time, though. There's, there are limitations where the school can have the parents, where they can teach us a lot. But there are teachers who need to be trained, and training means not just training with a paper degree. So the training needs to be done over a couple of years, like if I would take your idea about Finnish education, and I've just been to Estonia. Their teachers are trained for 5 years. It's no mean joke. Yeah, and if India can adopt that system...
Ma'am, that's the most wired country, tech country, the amount of coding. So the whole reference point is different. I mean, Mark's been saying that...
No, I can understand. But you can always
is there something
take
to learn?
the best part.
Is there something to learn from them?
Absolutely.
What would you feel?
I would say that we have to be very stringent with our teacher trainers, training period, and those who are passionate about teaching. Well, if you want to be a teacher, you hang on. Or if you don't want, you fade out. So that's where
the problem with
quality will come in.
That's a very, again, an idealistic answer, because if you want quality, if you want really IIT level training for teachers, that is expensive. And if at the end of the day, the teacher knows that she's going to get a job, maybe her first job is for 10,000 rupees in a school, nobody would want to, there's no ROI in that. She would rather, if she has best of brains, she would rather go and do an MBA or do something which has better ROI in terms of the salary potential, in terms of respect in the growth, career opportunities, marriage value, all those things go up, right? So why,
but I would
how do you consider the value of, high quality education is fine, but who's going to pay for that, and who's going to deliver that?
Well, this is, I think the government has to come in where we need to convince them that we need
When the government can't run an airline, what are they going to teach?
What I mean to say, the primary education teachers and the pre-primary are the basic of foundation of education. And then when you reach middle and high school, they are only driven by marks and the boards that take over, right? So up to middle school, I think we really, really need to have very, very trained teachers. And I would proudly say, my school, I have 145 teachers, and they've been there with the school for the last 18 years, 15 years, 20 years, 22, all because there's a happiness factor. They've been trained very well, and I think they are happy with being kids. And I think that's a huge factor. And quality comes in only when teachers are happy working.
I'd like to pass on the question, ma'am. I was going through my son's yearbook yesterday, and I saw this person went into IIT, these many kids went to the medical, the college. I didn't see a single teacher training institute or somebody gone to a B.Ed college, ma'am. If we don't respect our own profession, we don't give respect to our own profession, where are we going with this? And ma'am's given an idea that this is the government responsibility. And Vandana ma'am talked about, no, we have to train she was more a proponent of training in-house when you got the teachers on board and doing it in layers. How do you look at this challenge? Because I'm talking, a lot of educators here are teachers themselves, and they want to learn, and that's why they have an open mind and they're here. And there are school leaders over here who are really facing that challenge, that they don't get good quality teachers in their schools as well. So how do you think, as a leader, how do you address this challenge? How do you think, are you going to blame it on the government and hope something's going to happen someday? Or?
Certainly. So I would just like to start with a quote that schools of yesterday have teachers from the past teaching students of today to prepare them for the future. So taking this ahead, I would totally agree that yes, we need
Could
to
you repeat
actually.
that? I don't think everybody got that.
Okay.
Schools of?
The schools of yesterday have teachers from the past teaching students of today to prepare them for the future. So I feel that.
Do you have a hashtag for that as well so we could use?
Okay, definitely.
Please carry on.
So taking this ahead, what I feel is that we leaders, we need to introspect certainly within ourselves to understand that, yes, if we need to have effectiveness in the curriculum delivery, we need to work right from the basic level of the teacher trainings. To sum it up or to go to a most micro level, I should say that we need to design our teacher training modules with certain levels to cater them to and to understand that what kind of training a particular teacher would require for. This would finally envelope, or I should say take care of the
I
fact
think
that
the
we
current
need to have
syllabus
a.
of the B.Eds are not relevant. They are not.
Oh yeah, it's a good question you have asked. I do feel the syllabus is quite relevant. The only problem comes when these teachers, they come up into the school environment. Somehow the practices that are being taught in the B.Ed gets diluted due to the ecosystem of the school. So here, maybe we schools, as I said, we need to introspect and understand and practice the pedagogy, what we have learned in B.Ed and try to practice that.
I want to hold that. I'm not comfortable with that thought. You said the practices that they learned in B.Ed get diluted when they enter the school.
Yes.
So do you mean that in a good way or a bad way, or just it's different?
It's different in the sense that the teacher once joins a school, he or she has to understand that, okay, she has got another pressures of completing portion, getting in touch with the students, and trying to ensure that what has been given to her as a set of lessons that has to be delivered and the corrections and the other things. Whereas in B.Ed, the things are taught in quite a theoretical manner. The practice is somewhere get diluted. So I'll just take example of my schools, wherein we are actually trying to use certain concepts that are taught in B.Ed in our schools, and we have found the differences that has happened within the progress of the students in the academic terms.
So
And
you've used the theories in the school realm.
yes, theories which are quite practically possible
relevant, okay.
in the classrooms. So that has helped, and that has helped us design our teacher training modules, and it has to a large extent given some kind of a difference.
Great. So I think I've given everyone a chance to give the answer. I wish we could have to and fro. There's a sign saying time up. But if you could quickly have any show of hands, if you think you've got some idea of how this challenge, you're solving this in your schools, we'd be happy to hear that rather than having a question, because I don't believe you and I are any different, that just because we're on stage, we are apparently good experts at this. So if there's something that you would like to share,